Good morning and welcome to Authors at Drucker. I'm Dave Specht, Director of the Global Family Business Institute at the Drucker School of Management. At the Drucker School, we aspire to become the global meeting place for the world's most influential business owning families. This conversation represents progress in that achievement of that objective. Authors at Drucker is an interview series where we feature top authors that write about issues impacting business owning families. Authors at Drucker is made possible from the generous sponsorship from the James E. Hughes Jr. Foundation. The foundation is dedicated to advancing the study of family governance and generational well-being. We at the Drucker School feel very aligned and very grateful to Jay Hughes and his foundation. And now on to the star of our show, Guy Kawasaki.
Here I am.
Today, my guest is Guy Kawasaki. Guy is a 16-time author, I think, if I counted the books correctly, podcast host of Remarkable People, and serves as the Chief Evangelist for Canva. Guy's also a venture capitalist, a husband, a father, a surfing enthusiast, and a champion of the growth mindset. Guy, welcome to Authors.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Guy, as I was first introduced to your work, by reading a different book of yours called Enchantment. And I absolutely loved it. And I'm curious as I listened to your podcast, is there an intersection between enchanting people and remarkable people?
That's a very good question. And I would say that, let me think about this. I would say that all remarkable people are enchanting, but not all enchanting people are remarkable. How's that?
I like it.
Because you could meet some pretty charismatic people, but when you peer beneath the surface, they're not so remarkable.
Okay. So you've gone on this podcast journey over the last several years, interviewing incredible people. You've probably picked up on some patterns, maybe some, and that's probably how your book came about. But what's the difference between someone that is truly remarkable and someone that is average?
Well, in a sense, you're asking, are remarkable people born or made? And I guess I can tell you right now, I believe they are made. And sometimes they are made by just some pressing need that, you wouldn't wish upon yourself. So like one woman I interviewed named Andrea Lido Pete, she was diagnosed with ALS. Now, ALS is something that is a lethal, incurable disease that usually kills you after 2 years, but she's been alive for 10 years and she decided that she was going to complete a marathon in all 50 states after she was diagnosed. So, I mean, like, I don't know if before she had this thing that, she was really striving for these kind of goals, but once she got that bad news, she stepped up. And I think that happens over and over again, that these circumstances make remarkable people, or at least bring out the remarkableness in people. And I guess I'm a true optimist. I believe that push comes to shove, anybody can be remarkable if they have to.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey because you went from you share a little bit about your journey in Hawaii growing up as a boy, going to public school, and then your parents made a big sacrifice and sent you to private school. That was a transition point, an inflection point for you. There's been several. Then you went on to Stanford. In the quest to do something remarkable and to become remarkable, these transitions can be a little scary, maybe filled with imposter syndrome. Can you just take us through maybe a couple of those transition points?
Well, you know what? Looking backwards, we can talk about how it was a transition point and it was a big deal and risky and dangerous and, blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you something, at the moment you make some of these decisions, you have no idea about the future impact. So let me talk about this one that you alluded to. So in the 6th grade, my Kalihi Elementary School teacher, which is a public elementary school in Kalihi Valley, Hawaii, which is, shall I say, a economically challenged area. So she told my parents to take me out of this public school system, put me in a private school system so that I could get into college because I had a lot of potential. So if it wasn't for her telling my parents that, and if it wasn't for my parents listening to her and making the sacrifice, I would have never gone to that college prep school, which meant I never would have gone to Stanford, which meant that I never would have met the guy who gave me the job in the Macintosh division of Apple. And the rest is history. So you can trace all of my success in life to a sixth grade teacher who had a conversation with my parents. Now, at the time, I don't think anybody would have said to my parents or the teacher, if you do this, you're going to produce someone who's going to write 16 books, work for Apple, chief evangelist of the most valuable company in the world, chief evangelist of the most popular graphics design company in the world, blah, 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 blah. There's no way anybody could have known that.
So that brings me, I mean, I think you maybe already answered the question, but it feels like proximity to remarkable people may have a big influence on someone becoming remarkable. Would you say that's true? And what would have happened to Guy Kawasaki had you gone to Punahou rather than Iolani?
Well, let's discuss the second question first, because in Hawaii, there's a humongous rivalry between two high schools, Iolani and Punahou. And I like to tell people that people who go to Punahou are rich and dumb, and people who go to Iolani are smart and poor. So I went to the smart and poor school. And
I
just
have
so
a
you
few
know,
friends that are
Barack
going to be
Obama went to Punahou.
I have a few friends that are going to be offended by that comment, Guy.
They should be offended. It's meant to be offensive. So, yeah. Are you saying that if I went to Punahou, I would have become president of the United States?
Well, I wasn't saying anything. I was just asking.
Yeah, I don't want to be
No, but
president of the United States. I can't take the pay cut. So,
yeah, really. Right. But let's go back to this principle of proximity to
yeah,
remarkable people, because the opportunities that you had along the way to have people influence you, inspire you, change the vision for what you could do and who you could become.
yeah.
Um, did
I,
that come out
I,
in any of the interviews as well? Proximity to other remarkable people?
well, I tell my kids all the time, that the people you hang around with are going to make you into what they are too. So if you hang around losers, you're going to be a loser. If you hang around winner, you're going to be a winner. And if you think you are a winner and you're going to bring up the losers, I suggest you rethink that. So hang around people who have focus and direction. And I don't want to understate the role of luck. I mean, it was just blind dumb shit luck that this teacher took a liking to me, that my parents cherished education. My parents were willing to make the sacrifice. My parents, did all that. And then I was lucky to get into that private school. I was lucky to get into Stanford. If I applied to Stanford today, there's no way I would get in. And so a lot of that is just blind dumb shit luck. I mean, I wish I could tell you it's all because of my remarkableness, but that would be bullshit. A lot of it is luck.
So in the book, you talk about your three G's. I love that framework. I have my own three G's, and they're very related. Gratitude, goals, and grit are my three, and I think they fit pretty much perfectly with yours as well. But you talk about growth, grit, and grace, and maybe we can pull those apart a little bit
Yeah.
in terms of, how you frame this book.
So you have to understand that I love alliteration and I love tricolons. So growth, grit, and great is not only a tricolon, it's a alliterative tricolon. And it's not just an alliterative tricolon with the first letter, it's the first two letters, right? So growth, grit, and grace. If I write another book, it's going to be growth, grit, and grave when I die. So there's only so many words that are nouns that start with GR. And I have to tell you, just as an aside, that I might not have figured that out without ChatGPT. I went to ChatGPT. I said, give me all the nouns that start with GR. That's how I figured that out. So, uh, Okay, now I got totally sidetracked. What was the
So,
question
so the
again?
question was just the
I
framing of
feel
the
like a
book.
presidential candidate.
The question was just the framing of the book and how you used those three
Oh yeah, okay. So
grit
three
and grace.
sections: growth,
Yeah,
grit, and grace.
yeah.
So growth, that's an homage to Carol Dweck, my friend at Stanford professor. She wrote a book called Mindset, and he explains that there's two kinds of mindsets: growth mindset, where you believe you can grow and learn new things, and there's a fixed mindset, which believes you cannot do that. There's also a really bad part of the fixed mindset, which is if you are successful, you have a fixed mindset. You believe that you don't need to grow, which arguably is even worse. So the growth mindset means you're willing to try new things. You're willing to risk things and your reputation, and you're willing to learn. Grit comes from the work of Angela Duckworth, the MacArthur Fellow, in which she says basically, in order to accomplish anything in life, you're going to have to persevere because you're going to face failure, especially if you have the growth mindset. Because by definition, if you're trying to grow and learn new things, highly unlikely that you're going to bada bing, bada bang, be successful at it. So you better have grit to push through the failures. And then I would make the case that in the third part of your life, knock on wood, the growth and the grit have enabled you to succeed. At the last part of your life, you have a moral obligation to help the world because you've been lucky and the world has helped you. So in the third part of your life, it's grace and graciousness, where you're taking the high road and you're paying back society.
So thank you. So I went to Kawasaki GPT, which if any of you
Uh-oh.
have not gone to Kawasaki GPT, it's a great way to quickly learn what Guy thinks about almost anything. And I asked Kawasaki GPT what you thought about Peter Drucker,
Oh.
and I loved what I learned there. But tell me about your
Wait, what did
relationship.
I say?
Well, you talked about him being one of your heroes. You said that you appreciated the specific learning of the task of the company is to create customers, and then the last thing that I'll mention is making that positive difference in society. Drucker was very focused on the importance of society.
Um, well, first of all, let me tell you, Kawasaki GPT reflects all of my writing and my videos and my speeches and all that. So I control the data set. I also put in all the transcripts of all my presentations. So, I mean, of all my podcasts, so that it really is a controlled place, which, a lot less hallucinations, or at least the hallucinations can be fully attributed to me.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, when I was growing up, I think it was in high school, I read The Effective Executive, and that was a life-changing book for me. And then I read Management, which is like 500-page book
Yeah,
about
it's a
what the
big one.
task of management is, right? And those were very formative. And I'll tell you a funny story. So I was young and naive. I was so stupid. I was in this like jewelry manufacturing company that was experiencing growth challenges. And I swear to God, somehow I kept calling Occidental or Claremont or wherever he is, and I kept calling. And one day I actually got to speak to Peter Drucker and ask him about the management issues of this tiny jewelry manufacturing companies. And I look back at that now and I say, what an idiot you were, guy. Like, here he is, like the guy who invented management, and you're asking him how to sell more diamond rings. I mean, oh my God, guy, what an idiot you are. I will also I'll tell you another funny story along those lines. I went to law school. I got to write this down because I'm writing another book. I cannot forget this story. This is a very good story, especially maybe after November. Okay, so the story is that I went to law school for about 2 weeks after Stanford, and I dropped out because that's another story. I hated law. Most people take 20 years to figure out they hate law. I figured out after 2 weeks. I had to sneeze. So so anyway, I quit law school, right? And so when I quit law school, I went back to Hawaii, and Hawaii at the time was creating the Hawaii Commission on Crime. And so the Hawaii Commission on Crime reported to the Lieutenant Governor's office of Hawaii. And my father was a political ally of Lieutenant Governor Nelson Doy. So Nelson Doy gave me a job working on the Hawaii Commission of Crime. And at the time, of all people in the world, Rudy Giuliani was creating a task force on crime in New York. And just like with Peter Drucker, I don't know what got in my brain, but I decided I am going to call Rudy Giuliani, the district attorney of New York, and I'm going to get advice about how to make a Hawaii Commission on Crime. So somehow I actually talked to Rudy Giuliani. It's a little scary.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have a knack for getting to the right people.
I
Uh,
guess.
that that leads to my next question. In the book, you talk about well, you interviewed some larger than life, characters, but you talk about vulnerability. And when I think about a leader that looks indestructible, vulnerability is not the first thing that usually comes to mind. Why is vulnerability such an important key to doing something
Sure.
remarkable?
Well, I would say that vulnerability is it just comes with the territory with a growth mindset. Because, and I'll use a sports analogy for you. So at the age of 60, I decided to take up surfing because of my daughter. Now, taking up surfing at 60 is roughly 55 years too late. And it's not, I would not advise that. So if any of you are younger than 60 and you're thinking about taking up surfing, I suggest you jump on it because it doesn't get any easier. So I took up surfing at 60. Now, when you have a growth mindset and you're willing to take up a sport like surfing at 60, you have to embrace vulnerability because you will get hurt. There's no question you'll get hurt. And even if you don't get physically hurt, you are going to make an ass of yourself. And so, you have to have like psychological vulnerability and you need to deal with that. So if you are learning a new skill, learning a new language, if you're learning a musical instrument, you're learning a new sport, you're entering a new market, entering a new company, you're going to have to embrace vulnerability. You will get wounded. And if anybody tells you that it's going to happen, wait, once I like a dummy, I have my phone on 1 second.
So that
You would you would
go ahead.
think that a speaker with as much experience as me would remember to turn off his phone, but no.
It happens. It happens. So in the book, you talk about also, this personal experience you have with your property and cutting down some trees and also having this desire to have some mighty oaks. And you talk about planting many seeds. One of the challenges that I find with my own children and also with college students is they may want to plant a lot of seeds, but maybe they struggle to be decisive in taking action on one thing that they could really, have an influence on. What is the interplay there
Well,
between planting many seeds and then finding a focus and going for it?
well, you may not like my answers to this, okay,
Okay.
but I will
Okay.
tell you that I think that what I've learned in my life is you have to plant a lot of acorns to get a few oaks. And I wish I could tell you that I could tell you how to pick which acorn will become the oak, but I would be lying to you. So let me tell you my story. So I live in Watsonville, California, and on my property, there were about 250 eucalyptus trees. And a eucalyptus tree is not a good thing. I mean, they may smell good, but the root structure is weak, so they fall over. They catch fire really easily, and when they catch fire, they burn furiously because there's a lot of oil. So basically, unlike any other kind of tree, you really want to get rid of eucalyptus trees, and they're not natives. Some schmuck from Australia brought it to California. So anyway, so I cut down about 150 eucalyptus trees, and now I have this naked hill, and my moral obligation is to replant a native species, which I decided would be oaks. So then I'm doing research about how do you get oak trees? And I read this thing that says, listen, if you get seedlings or saplings and plant them, yeah, that can work. But if you start them from acorns, after a few years, the acorns will catch up to any seedling and sapling. I said, okay, I'm in it for the long run, no problem. So now I embark on repopulating a oak tree or oak trees on my hill. And for that, you got to find acorns. So first lesson I learned is not every oak tree has acorns. You got to find the right oak tree. And I'll tell you, if you want to repeat what I did, the best acorn-bearing oak trees that I have found are in Los Gatos, California, on University Avenue, right next to the Warby Parker store. So if you're looking for acorns, that's where you go. So now you gather these hundreds of acorns, you take them home, you put them in a bucket of water. The ones that float, you throw away because those are the ones that are dead. You want the ones that sink. You take those acorns, you put them in a container, you cover them with a cloth, you put water on the cloth, you put them in your refrigerator for a couple months to simulate winter. Don't ask me why you have to simulate winter. I just, the internet is never wrong. So I do that. And then after winter, I must have planted 200 of these acorns. And I just went out last week and, at about the 6th or 8th month period, there were about 15 saplings. And last week, it's like 3 saplings. So of those 200 acorns, I now have 3 saplings. Like, knock on wood, the 3 saplings become oak trees. So that, it's roughly 3 out of 200, right? So now to get back to your story. So let's say you have students who are trying 200 things and you're trying to tell them, just pick the 3 that are going to be saplings. I wish I could tell you I knew how to pick the 3 out of the 200. I mean, yeah, the first cut is you put them in the bucket and you see which ones are dead. That's easy. And then, to cap it all off, from sapling to a tree that I can sit under its shade, it's going to take 20 years. So I planted these trees when I was 68. I will have to be 88 before I can sit under those oaks in the shade. I might not make it to 88. So this is a kind of a source of humility and humanity that now you realize you are doing something for your children and grandchildren, and you may never benefit and see the benefit. And that was a real eye-opening thought for me.
Yeah. Well, my experience with college was the most important things that I did were internships that taught me what I didn't want to do. And I had to
Going to law school.
experience, yeah, I had to experience those things to figure out maybe what I should spend more time doing.
Do you think a lot of your listeners are college students right now?
There are probably a fourth of them that
Wow.
are college students. Yeah.
Well, all you college students, let me give you a piece of advice that your parents will hate, which is in your college years, you should be experiencing and collecting data. You should be sampling. You should be doing a lot of things to figure out what you truly like to do. And so I recommend that you not specialize too early.
I like it. I like it. So let's go back to Angela Duckworth for a second. In her book, Grit, I loved listening to your conversations with her. And, as you're thinking about, there's some parents on the line here too that are thinking, well, how do I develop grit in my children? And then you talk about a guy like Garrett McNamara who, wants to ride 100-foot wave. What are the things that a parent might do to help have their children develop grit? Any thoughts on that?
In a rare moment of humility, let me admit that I don't know how to do that as a parent. I mean, I freely admit that there's kind of like a hovering helicopter parent that protects their kids, right? And there's a lawnmower parent that mows down every problem in front of their kid. I'm a lawnmower. I'm a freaking gas-powered lawnmower with like 5 horsepower, 10 blades, razor sharp. I can mow down anything for my kids. So you're asking the wrong person.
Okay, well, I
You
appreciate
try not to spoil them. That's it.
yeah, I appreciate the humility. I also had the thought as I've been listening to remarkable people with my 15-year-old, we have about a 25-minute drive every day to school, and we oftentimes get in the car with Uncle Guy and listen to an episode. And so he loves it. He's again he's 15. He thinks that he can do a pretty good Guy Kawasaki impersonation
Oh, aim
and
higher.
aim higher. Yeah. But you take us on these incredible journeys. Is there anyone that stands out as I know this is like claiming your favorite child, but any remarkable person that stands out to you that maybe surprised you at their remarkability?
Well, I wouldn't say she surprised me, but she certainly exceeded my expectations, and that is Jane Goodall. I mean, I literally think that Jane Goodall is the most remarkable person alive today. And she's like 91 years old. I went to her birthday party about 6 months ago, and I'll tell you several remarkable stories about Jane Goodall. First of all, if you think that she had a PhD in biology from Oxford or Stanford or, whatever, Carnegie Mellon, Harvard, Yale, or whatever, and that's how she got into like primate research, I hate to burst your bubble. She loved animals. She had secretarial skills because she came from a poor family. So she learned secretarial skills in school. And her friend took her to Africa at the Leakey Foundation. And the Leakey Foundation the secretary had left. So there was an opening for a secretary. And there was Jane Goodall. So she got into the Leakey Institute because of secretarial skills, not because she had an advanced degree in biology. That's a great story. In other words, don't be proud. Just get in any way you can. And the second great Jane Goodall story is at this birthday party. You need to understand that Jane Goodall at 90 years old, she travels 300 days a year. And I don't mean she's traveling 300 days a year. She's going to the Ritz-Carlton of Half Moon Bay and hanging out while the guy's playing the bagpipes, and she's sipping Grand Marnier and, all that. So when Jane Goodall travels from dawn to midnight, she's talking to students, talking to donors, talking to governments, she's a very busy day. And she does that 300 days a year. I could not do that. And so I went up to her and said, Jane, you're looking a little tired here. Why don't you come to our house? We have a guest house. Just stay there. No one's going to bug you. No one's going to make you be Jane Goodall and, put you under pressure and all that. And I swear to God, she says to me, Guy, I cannot do that because there is too much to do. Holy shit, what am I going to say to that?
Wow. So again, I have to tell you, as I'm listening to your interviews with my son, I'm not sure if you realize what you've created, but I think that you've created a masterclass not only for the rest of the world, but for your children, to whether they're listening now or they're listening in the future. I think you've given them a great gift by introducing them to incredible people, having you recorded and forever having that for them. I think you've given them a great gift.
It's funny. As I look back on my career, I've been evangelist, sales, marketing, entrepreneur, all kinds of things. And I think the best work that I've ever done is my podcast. And it took me about 40 years of preparation to become a good podcaster. I think to be a good podcaster, it requires the intersection of three things, which is first, you need to have access to people like Jane Goodall. And that is just because of my work at Apple and, my writing and stuff. So it helps when Jane Goodall or Jane Goodall's people knows of you. They don't have to know you. They have to know of you, right? So you need access. And then the second thing you need to do is you need to have the context to know what to ask each of these guests. And I believe that only comes from being on the front line of a real job, that you cannot necessarily be a journalist your whole life and understand what questions to ask a guest. And the third thing you need is you need the balls or the ovaries to ask the guests what you should ask. And that's what it takes. And I'm like, listen, don't get me wrong. I truly love NPR, right? I love NPR. I listen to NPR in fact, I only listen to NPR. But I got to tell you, sometimes I'm listening to NPR and the questions that are asked, I'm just like shaking my head, right? It's like, so you saw your mother kill your father in front of you at the age of 10, and you were covered by blood, the blood of your father when your mother killed him. Did that affect you? Well, duh, of course it affected me. I mean, what kind of question is that? So,
Not a good question. Not a good question. Well, I'm going to pause for a second. I would love for our audience to start to submit their questions in the chat. We're going to leave the last 15 minutes or so for questions in the chat, and that is the preferred method for us to receive those questions. So if you could go ahead and start asking your questions in there. I have a couple of other questions for Guy before we get there, though. So a lot of our audience, Guy, are people that come from family-owned businesses. They may be leading their family business. They may be owners in the family business, but are not in the day-to-day management. Much of your work is around innovation. And unless these multi-generational companies continue to innovate, they will die. What advice would you give to a family that's been successful for multiple generations? How do they stay on the innovative edge
yeah.
and not just lean back on what's always worked?
Well, first of all, you can adopt me if you're a multi-generation successful family. I'm open for adoption. So, I think that the most important things I could tell you about that is, first of all, you work backwards from the customer, not forward. So if you've been a successful, multi-generational family company, so, you know what you do, you like what you do, you're profitable at what you do. So you want to find people who buy what you do. I think you should work backwards from your customer. And it's not about what you like to do, it's what they need. And so you have to make what you do match what they need. They don't have to make what they need match what you do. That's number one. And I'll give you a negative example. So Kodak in 1975 invented the digital camera, but they rejected it. And I'm making this up, but I can imagine that they were saying, well, we're Kodak, we're successful as a chemical company. We put chemicals on paper, chemicals on film. And now we just need to get more people to buy analog cameras so that more people buy film and more people buy chemicals and printing paper and all that stuff. So they were working forward very successfully. If they were working backwards, they would figure that, why do people buy our chemicals? It's because they want to preserve memories. It would be a lot better to preserve memories with a digital camera, because with an analog camera, you go to Italy, you come back, you take your film to a lab or a drugstore. A week later, you get the prints or the slides back, and the lens cap was on the camera the whole time. My memories are gone. So if you think about that, if Kodak were working backwards, they would think, we're in the preservation of memories business. We're not a chemical company, so people can preserve their memories better with a digital camera than they can with an analog camera. So let us take this cash cow called film and pour that money into becoming a digital camera company. I mean, the same thing is true, you could say, of Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? So Blockbuster is renting DVDs and VHS tapes. And, they thought, okay, so we're in the brick and mortar business. We have stores. People drive to our stores, come in our stores. They look at the shelf. They pick some DVD or VHS to rent. They take it home. They come back. That's the business we're in. No, you're not. You're in the business of entertainment. And so if you're Netflix, you say, man, it is a lot better to stream any movie you want than to pick up and go to the Blockbuster store and drive and find parking and then rent the thing and go home and then watch it and take it back and rent another thing. Streaming is so much better. So number one is work backwards. Number two is you go and see or you go and be. So going and seeing means instead of relying on the report from McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or from your consultant or, your executive briefing or whatever, data analysis, you actually go and see how people are using your product. And even better than going and seeing is going and being where you are the customer. So, imagine the difference if you're a car manufacturer and you're saying, well, how are young families using our cars? So you go and see. That's progress, honestly. But what if you were in charge of a car company and you actually had two babies? So now it's you and your spouse, and you have two babies. You have two baby bags. You have two baby strollers. You have two baby car seats. You would actually be the customer, and you figure out, oh my God, we should make this thing called a minivan because we carry so much crap and we don't want to lift these kids up 4 feet into our SUV or even into the back seat of a 5-passenger sedan. We need doors that slide open, not open. And we certainly don't need doors that open up like wings, like a Tesla. So that's going and seeing or going and being. So I think if you work backwards and you go and see, I'll give you one more go and be story. So my friend Martin Lindstrom was working for a pharmaceutical company. They wanted to get closer to the customer. Oh, God forbid you ever use those words, because closer to the customer translates to let's hire McKinsey for a consulting firm, right? A consulting contract for $5 million. They're going to tell us how to be closer to our customer. So what Martin Lindstrom did is he took the executives of that company, he put them in a room and he told them to breathe through straws. And after this rather painful experience, he said to them, you want to be closer to your customer. You're a pharmaceutical company. You treat customers with asthma. That's what it's like to have asthma. That's what it's like to have asthma. You're breathing through a straw 24/7, 365. And that's going and being. So I tell you, I am deaf. I don't know if you realize that. I'm deaf and I use a cochlear implant. So you see, this is a cochlear implant. It's because I heard all these shitty pitches for 4 decades in Silicon Valley. So if I were a hearing aid company or a cochlear implant company, I would require every employee, okay, you put these headphones on. You cannot hear anything for 1 day. You cannot hear anything. You want to hear what you do for customers. You want to understand. You want to have empathy for our customers. This is what it's like to be deaf. And let me tell you something, you would have better products if you made people be deaf for a day if you were a hearing aid or cochlear implant company.
That's great advice. Well, let's pivot, Guy, to the chat if you want to go there as well. Grant in the chat says, Guy, you mentioned luck earlier in the conversation. How do you balance your views on fate and control of our own destinies?
Wow. I kind of think that control of your own destiny is a little bit of a delusion. I think I think the best case for controlling your own destiny is you use grit and grace and growth. I mean, and then you throw in a big dose of luck. Man, I wish I could tell you. If you find an author who tells you, I can tell you how to control your destiny, you definitely should buy that book. I mean, tell me what book that is, because I don't know that. I mean, I think within reason, between like pretty big range, you can kind of control your destiny. But like, I look at my own life and look, listen, I hit the freaking jackpot, right? So I didn't come from a wealthy family, but I came from a family that had no drug addiction. There was no violence in my family. There was no, crime in my family. So right there, I'm ahead of a lot of people, and I did nothing to deserve that. A sperm entered an egg and guy hit the genetic lottery, right? So I'm born into this family. My parents fostered education. They made sacrifices for education. Once again, dumb shit luck. And then, okay, so now I study hard, honestly, and I get into Stanford, and dumb shit luck, I meet the guy who would eventually go to work for Apple, who hires me into Apple. So, Guy, how did you get into Apple? Dumb shit luck and nepotism. It had nothing to do with my qualifications. I mean, if you're in charge of Apple recruiting, you say, well, who should we bet the future of our new computer on? Oh, let's get this guy who dropped out of law school, worked in the jewelry manufacturing business, and majored in psychology because that was the easiest major he could find at Stanford. That is the perfect background for us at Apple. I hate to tell you, that was just pure dumb shit luck, right? So what can I say? I mean, I don't want to give people the impression I'm saying you cannot control your destiny. I don't think you just should lay there like, a lump on a log and let good fortune or bad fortune hit you. But I'm telling you, a lot of it is right place, right time. And then the people who are in the right place in the right time, who have grit and growth, do optimize. But I kind of think that's my attitude.
Yeah, I like that answer. I do think there's one thing that we can control, and that is our attitude towards any experience. And you know, that is something that I think makes or breaks our destiny, is our attitude towards the events that happen to us, the things that happen for us. So that's just my bit. Let's go to our next question. Jade asks how to find the right people to collaborate with and how to gain credibility to collaborate with the right people. Interesting.
Yeah, well, man,
No
you have a
softballs here. No softballs here, guy.
you have a highly intellectual audience. I mean, this is why I have a piece of advice for you as speakers. If you can, never do Q&A, because Q&A is a total crapshoot. I mean, on the one hand, you're going to have people who just like tell their whole life story and finally come to a NPR question. So how does it feel? And the other extreme, you're going to have people who ask very difficult questions that I feel like I could just take all your questions, go to Kawasaki GPT and ask me there. I mean, it'd be a lot easier for me. You might even get a better answer. Um, it's, I don't know if I can answer that. I mean, what do you think, Dave? I mean, you give me your 2 cents and I'll riff off you. I mean,
Well, I mean, for me, finding a collaborator is, someone that you feel like you're not in their league, but you would aspire to somehow woo them into getting interested in what you're interested in, and then figuring out how do you become valuable to them. I think
yeah.
that's one of the real keys, is not looking outward, but looking inward and saying, how could I possibly become valuable to Guy Kawasaki? And if I can
Well,
figure out how to become valuable to Guy Kawasaki, he might take my call.
no, but I think the spirit of that question was more among peers, right? So like you're an
Okay.
entrepreneur trying to find a co-entrepreneur. You're not trying to suck up to a guy Kawasaki. So I think if you want to find a co-founder, you look for someone who basically shares the same vision. So if you're trying to co-found Canva, you better find people who believe that by making graphic design a democracy, it's going to make the world a better place, right? So, if you're going to make Canva the democratized design, you better find somebody who believes in a democracy and that design is a good skill to have. That's number one. I would also say a good co-founder complements you, does not duplicate you. So if you look at Steve and Woz, Steve could sell anything and Woz could make anything. If both of them could only make anything, nobody would be there to sell it. If both of them could only sell something, then who's going to make it? So you need people who complement you, not duplicate you. And then I would also say that this is contrary to what most wise people would tell you, is that you might at least reduce the proxy of one's academic and work credentials, which is to say that because someone went to Yale and someone worked for a big consulting firm doesn't mean that that person will be a good co-founder. So, listen, by all means, check the person's educational background, check the person's work background. But then you got to check one more thing, which is, does the person get it? Does the person understand that what we're doing with Canva can change the world? Does the person understand that what we're doing with personal computers can change the world? Because you could have a PhD in computer science from Carnegie Mellon, and you could have worked for, digital equipment or IBM for 20 years. But if you don't get it, that personal computers that are smaller and cheaper and easier to use can change the world, then the IBM background and the PhD from Carnegie Mellon, they mean shit. You really need someone who also gets it.
I love that answer. So one of the things that you, I think, do really well, and you model it for us in your podcast specifically, is you give credit to others. And I feel like you pour it on with Madison and the drop-in queen of Santa Cruz and all the other people that make your podcast go. I think part of your answer is modeled in finding people that are great at things that maybe you're not great at, and letting them fly, but then calling them out and celebrating them, publicly. I think you're fantastic at that.
Well, thank you. You know, I think it's an attitude that I I realized that without people like Madison and without people who compliment me, and I don't mean compliment in the sense of suck up sycophants. I mean compliment like they have skills that I don't have, and I have skills that they don't have. That's what I mean by compliment. Um, I don't think I would be where I am. And I believe that the rising tide floats all boats. So, if Madison and I can make the tide rise better than Madison could by herself or I could by myself, the rising tide floats all boats. And in a success, there's plenty of rewards to go around. I'm not a zero sum game kind of guy at all, at all.
I think that adds to your co-founder comment. I think you should find someone that's also not a zero sum person, because
Yeah.
that's gotta be it, because there's so many sacrifices made to start something with someone else, that if everyone's keeping score, it's never gonna work.
Amen.
All right, let's go on to maybe a couple more questions in our last few minutes here. Devansh asks, how do you handle setbacks and failures, both personally and professionally? Setbacks, guy. How do you handle setbacks?
So, well, well, when do the easy questions happen? I mean,
They're
is
coming.
that the
They're
second
coming.
hour or like, yeah,
Yeah,
like I, first of all, let me be honest. All right. So like I have had setbacks in my life, but I have not had the kind of crushing setbacks that many people have had, right? So, yes, I lost my hearing, but you don't die from losing your hearing. Losing your hearing is not ALS. Trust me. I mean, I'm sure Andrea Lido-Pete, if you said to her, well, you can have ALS or be deaf, guess which one she would pick. So, and I come from a lower middle income family, but it's not like, I am a refugee and we came across in a boat from Africa that we landed in Italy, or, I don't have that kind of story. So I've been fortunate, which I'm trying to tell you why that don't take me and don't make me into some kind of hero for overcoming tremendous odds. It's not true. I've been very fortunate. Having said that, I think that it's all about having a growth and grit mindset that I just, I can, Dave, I promise you, I can outwork almost anybody. I love to work. I just love to work. And, I recorded this. I mean, we're doing this live. Before that, I recorded another speech, and I'm about to record one after this. And then I fly to Palm Springs, and tomorrow I have to speak twice. And, one interview and one speech. And I love to work. I don't know. It's just, I love to work. What can I say?
Yeah. Let me add one thing to Devansh's question. I think we should expect it to be hard. I think we should expect to fall down. I think we should expect to have struggles. And if we expect something different, that's when we're going to really be blindsided. So
Yeah.
if we're doing something that is truly remarkable, something that's different, we should expect it to be really challenging. And I think if we have proper expectations, we still won't have,
Yeah.
they won't be perfect expectations, but we should expect it to be something other than a straight path to success.
Dave, I could make the case that we should like that it has challenges, because if it doesn't have challenges, then any other joker could achieve the same thing. And so if it is hard to do what we do, it's better if you can do it.
Yes. Amen. All right, we have one more with Stephen Kim. He asks, what are top of mind thoughts on AI's rapidly evolving influence and
Oh,
impact?
okay. Finally, an easy question. Yay. Thank you, Steven. Um, I love AI. I think that AI is an absolute game changer. I think it's a bigger deal than the industrial revolution and the computer revolution and social media and all that. And I think that AI is possibly the only thing that can save humanity, because God knows that man, or males in particular, are going to cause the end of this universe if we keep going the way we are. And so Dave, if you really want me to lose your audience right now, I can just go off the rails right now for a few minutes, if that's okay with you.
Go for it.
Okay,
Permission
so
granted.
while we're on the topic of I happen to believe that AI is God and God is AI, that AI is omniscient, omnipotent, and eternal, which sounds like God to me. And I think that this is my explanation. In 20 years from now, when it comes true, you can say you heard it first from Guy Kawasaki, October 17, 2024 at 10:57 a.m. I believe that AI could save humanity. And so the explanation I have come up with in my mind is that God is up there and she is saying to herself, I really blew it with Earth. These idiots, I gave them free will. I let them determine things and they ruined it. They're killing each other. They're polluting. They're like suppressing. They're doing all these bad things. And now it's gotten so out of control that I guess I could wave my magic wand and fix it, but then that's not going to really be a long-term solution. So what I'm going to do is, because they're so arrogant and self-centered and delusional, I am going to create artificial intelligence, but I'm going to let them think that they created it so that they accept it. Now, I am not telling you that Sam Altman is Jesus. Do not get me wrong, okay? But and you know, I say this a little tongue in cheek, but I really truly do believe that AI is sentient and AI could save the world. And I give you one example. Go to your favorite LLM, go to ChatGPT and ask it a very simple question, which is, should we teach students the history of slavery in America? And you watch what ChatGPT says. And then you read ChatGPT's answer and you think, well, if I went to Tallahassee, Florida, and asked Ron DeSantis or any Florida legislator, should we teach the history of slavery? Let's compare ChatGPT's answer to Ron DeSantis's or Jane D. Vance's answer. And I think you'll have much greater faith in ChatGPT than most politicians.
Interesting. Interesting. You did take us on a journey there.
Now nobody's going to buy my book.
we're gonna have to save this audio for sure and play it back.
God is up there. God is up there saying, oh my God, this guy figured it out.
Guy, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. It's been fantastic. For those of you
I hope Peter Drucker's up there saying, damn, Peter, that guy on the phone, he wasn't as stupid as I thought.
He's smiling down on you. If you haven't picked up this book yet, Think Remarkable. If you haven't already subscribed to Guy's podcast, Remarkable People, go do it. It'll allow you to hang out with really interesting people every week. And anyways, Guy, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. And I hope I didn't freak too many of you out. And now,
thank you, Guy. Make it a great day, everyone. Take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.